Hey there, everybody, and welcome to the Fearless Road podcast, where we explore entrepreneurial insights, stories, and advice on embracing fear, breaking boundaries, and achieving goals on the road to success. I'm your host, Michael Devous. And after years of overcoming obstacles and tragedy, I began to wonder, how does someone become fearless? Well, that's exactly what we're going to find out. In every episode, we dive into the lives of individuals who've learned to turn fear into fuel, face some incredible challenges, and cultivate a fearless mindset while navigating their fearless road. So join me for in-depth interviews with some amazing people where we investigate more deeply the valleys on their road to success, because the valleys are where character is built, foundations are laid, and where the fearless are born. Welcome to the Fearless Road podcast. And now we're back with the final segment in the interview with Maria Failla, Finding Her Voice.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to, so what you're talking about is, I was struggling with some pretty bad depression when I had moved back in with my parents, and I was just like completely flailing, like, no, what am I going to do? My industry just evaporated in front of my eyes. Like, how am I supposed to move forward?
A lot of self-judgment.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so my mom, there's a gorgeous, very similar. The other thing is, I think there's a gorgeous little nature path near everyone. It's just that no one knows. Like there's probably an opportunity to get into nature that's more readily accessible than you think. It's just that we're not looking, So
Mm-hmm.
I encourage everyone to figure that out. But yeah, there was a gorgeous nature path. And I would go for walks every day. And like I said earlier, like sometimes I would cry. Like I left a lot in that forest. Like I'd leave my tears, I'd leave my laughter, I'd leave my neutrality, my numbness. I was numb for, probably 3 weeks or 3 months. I don't know. And it really allowed me to kind of get back to myself. And so I was a singer. And when I lost my job, I didn't sing for months, because it just hurt. Like it was this experience of, it was like just really sad to sing and then realize that like I couldn't use my voice in the capacity that I wanted to on stages for, singing for people. And so I kind of went silent. Like I think I said in the book, like my heart kind of went dormant and my voice kind of went dormant. Like there was the silence that kind of came over me. And as I was walking, and this took a while, right? It took a bunch of walks, but I noticed that all of a sudden, like I would just start like mimicking bird song with my voice, or I would just start humming a song that was stuck in my head. And then, humming turned, like a little bird mimic or a little hum turned into, okay, actually singing lyrics to words I knew. And then all of a sudden I was, full throated, just like singing in the middle of the woods, recording it on my camera, like having so much fun with it, singing to the inchworms. Exactly. Like singing to the inchworms that were, falling from the sky, or the little bluebirds.
Yes.
And it was just this really beautiful way of like literally, truly finding my voice again, but also kind of in a figurative way too, of just like reconnecting with myself and finding kind of my personality again after kind of going through such a tough time. And I think another thing you touched on, Phaedra, is the importance of a routine. Like one walk in nature isn't going to cure your depression. Wouldn't it be great if it would? But it's the consistency. It's also what you mentioned, like walking the same path and seeing the seasons change helps you internalize, like even if you're feeling so stuck. I felt so stuck and paralyzed in that moment. It felt like my whole life got put on hold. But I was watching summer turn into fall, turn into winter. Like I was watching the leaves change, and on an internal level, on a cellular level, I was able to process like, okay, time is moving, we are growing, we are evolving. Like it's very poetic, but nature can really be your teacher if you let it. And so I think it's a beautiful opportunity that you do have to commit. You have to commit a little bit of time to in order to really reap the benefits of it. But you also notice that your body starts to crave it. So like on days that if I had appointments or I just like couldn't get to my walk that day, I would notice that I'd like be a little antsy, or I'd be like, 5 minutes early to my walk the next day. Which I also think was really interesting, because that's your body, confirming this thing. Because this is a lot of this nervous system regulation work is coming at it from a body level and not a mind. You know, your mind can get very busy. Talk about entrepreneurship too. Your mind can just like lead you to the darkest dark depths, you know. And sometimes if you can kind of learn to trust your body and to have your body connect with nature and kind of show you the real truth of the matter, that can be really helpful.
Yeah. Well, and I also think there's this tendency to go, okay, like I have a bit, especially as an entrepreneur, but just as a person in America, society, in general, just to sit there and go, like, I'm too busy. I don't have time for that. Like, that's the first thing, right, that gets pushed aside.
Yes.
The things that truly nourish our body and our spirit and our soul, right, like eating healthy meals on time, right, often gets pushed out of the way. And spending time outside. Those are the first things to go, and they're probably the things that are the most beneficial.
Yeah.
And I've gotten out of my practice, especially since moving. You know, we got home from our 2-week trip. 2 weeks later, I moved, and then after spending a month with Michael, I was by myself in not what's a new place, but you know, again, and you know. Post-trip and post-hectic moving, depression set in, and I just kind of hold up, and I truly haven't gotten, you know, I've come out of the depression, but I haven't gotten back out into a regular habit of walking outside in nature, and it's definitely, this is such a great reminder of all of the many benefits that can come from that. So
yeah, and
this interview could not have come at a better time.
That makes me so happy. And also, you know, if you are in a city and you don't have access to a good nature walk, you can create there's multiple chapters in my book on this, but you can create a mindfulness routine with your houseplants. So you don't have to go get immersed in the forest to experience the benefit of what we're talking about. You can experience the benefit of building a, you know, sustainable routine with a couple of houseplants that you will still like reap so many rewards from. But it's about the, you know, the key part is the routine for sure. Yeah.
And one more thing I wanted to touch on, and it's kind of random, but it came to mind when I was reading the section when you were talking, when you went forest bathing in the redwoods.
Yeah.
And listen, and the 1 square inch, the 1 square inch of like not having noise pollution, which is marked, which I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit. And then it made me think of something really cool that you may or may not know about. But if you could just let the audience know a little bit about the 1 square inch.
Yeah. So when I moved to the woods, one of the shocking things that I did not understand was noise pollution. And my first 3 weeks.
And how long you've been immersed in it.
Especially in New York City.
Yes. And how lucky that I was doing all of this research as I did this move, because I noticed that I had a spike in anxiety when I moved to the woods because the silence was almost deafening. Like that phrase, the silence is deafening, really hit home where, I mean, I just remember those first couple of weeks looking at my husband just being like, it's so quiet. This is spooky. Like, this is wild. And it almost being like my nervous system was just like, what is this? And it's because I had lived in the city for over a decade with trucks and also light. Light pollution is another thing that a lot of my research came up. But like our bodies are not designed to listen to traffic at 3 o'clock in the morning and to have lights come in your window, you know, from the street lights. And because of modern advancements in society, which are fabulous, you can take a plane and be anywhere, you know, there are very few places in the world, specifically in the States, that actually have no manufactured noise pollution for, I think it's over 15 minutes. With flight what's it called? Flight paths. Flight patterns and trains and traffic. Yeah. And so in the Hoh National Rainforest on the west coast of the States, there's this 1 square inch that has no, you know, that falls under these guidelines. And you can go to onesquareinch.org to listen to a recording of what it sounds like. But there,
I think I have 1 square inch here.
Yeah. Amazing.
I think
so good.
You might on private land.
Well, because our property backs up. our property, which is about 50 acres, backs up to the Lincoln National Forest, which is a little over 300,000 acres.
Incredible.
And we're surrounded by it on the backsides, and nothing
Absolutely
as far as I can
gorgeous.
tell, except for the planes from Alamogordo Air Force Base occasionally come this way. But in general, they don't. So we're not part of that flight pattern. We're actually off the flight pattern. So I think we might actually have
Your own square
one
inch,
square
you lucky duck.
Right.
So then it was very interesting, being in the woods, getting used to the silence. I can barely go back to New York City and sleep there these days because my nerve.
Do you find your response to it so much more?
Oh, it's so jarring. I mean, I feel like my nervous system, I was in fight or flight for 10 years, living in New York City. Literally, your nervous system doesn't know any different, right? So
your parasympathetic doesn't ever
Exactly.
relax. It never
it
shuts
never
down.
truly shuts down. And so once I experienced what that actually feels like, when I go to the city now, it's like so jarring for me. My husband and I joke that like the minute we get there, we're counting the minutes till we get to go home. I live 2 hours outside of the city. I'll go meet a friend for dinner in the city, and at 9:00 I'll drive home because I'm like, I want to wake up in my own bed, and like, I don't want to deal with sleeping on a couch with the light coming in and the sounds. And so I think, but I had no idea that my nervous system was even this raised. I was even in this state until I moved. And I realized that this isn't available to a lot of people. Not everyone can just run for the hills the way my husband and I did. And I don't necessarily recommend it for a lot of people because it's a huge 180. But what I found was, you can replace nature sounds throughout your day. So I wrote my whole book to a 8-hour nature sounds playlist on YouTube. And I would just play it on YouTube, and I would write my book. And you can, on the Headspace app, you can go to sleep to nature sounds. Like you can find nature sounds on Spotify. Like it's very easy to find. So it's a hack. Ideally you want to just go be in nature. But if you can, and you want that nervous system healing, and you want that opportunity, while you're in your house, while you're in your apartment, in your congested city, can you tell, Alexa or Google Home to play some, jungle sounds or forest sounds so that at least your nervous system can kind of feel what it's supposed to.
Yes.
Well, and speaking of that, and I love that idea, and I really believe in that too. And we are slowly going to be running out of time here, and I've got a couple more questions to get to. But are you or will you be planning a retreat? I think this is the perfect opportunity to take these ideas that you've created and create a sort of retreat for people from the city to have these touch points, to reconnect, to hear some of this and get their parasympathetic system calmed down a little bit. I would love.
That's so interesting.
I
would love
your joy retreat.
I would love to do that. Maybe that's 2025. We have some big plans for 2024. So I'm like, I don't think I can.
I know you're busy.
On retreats for then, but I do think ultimately, I want to bring this research and this accessible wellness practices using plants that are affordable to live a happier life to as many people as possible at scale in the most affordable way. So I feel like my 2024 initiatives are more about how can I reach more people for free to empower them with this information. But then I think I would love the idea of doing a retreat to be able to like really dive deep and have some sort of quarterly reset or something.
Yes, it's fun. You are so good. That was my next. Are there any specific goals or milestones you'd like to achieve? And you're blah blah blah. Like you're literally already there. Like you're doing it. This is great. I think a retreat would be perfect. I think your next
Let's
iteration
put it into the universe, baby. The Growing Joy Retreat.
Yeah, absolutely. You now have it, universe. Make it so. We are, of course, in studio with Maria Failla, Phaedra Shinaki, and myself, Michael Devous, at the Fearless Road podcast, talking about growing joy and finding your balance and finding your voice and your vulnerability. Not only to become fearless, but be mindful of the journey that you're on. Lastly, before we, sign off, we ask our guests, as we've asked you, to share a little bit about your life and be vulnerable. Vulnerability, I feel like, is a very, very, I was thinking about this earlier when I was getting ready this morning, because your book's about growing joy. And I was like, is vulnerability like this other, is the root of joy, is the space where joy germinates and comes out of, is that vulnerability? How does vulnerability play a role for you on your fearless road and
Yeah.
with joy?
I mean, it's everything. Like I said earlier, I feel like entrepreneurship is like walking around with no skin on. You're so vulnerable. You're literally just saying, "Okay, world, here's my heart, here's my joy, here's what works for me. Can I help you?
Here are my dreams.
Here are my dreams. Can I help you?" And you hope that, what you say resonates with people. I don't think there's anything more brave than that, right? Especially like in today's society where everything is curated, everything is filtered, everything is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. I think it's a very brave thing to allow yourselves to be vulnerable. And yes, I do feel like the greatest things out of life come from vulnerability, whether it's a relationship. Like, how are you going to have a true love, like a true relationship, if you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable? And the joy that comes from that. So I do think you're speaking a lot of truth in vulnerability being a core principle, a core root of what joy can bring. And I think too, even the definition of joy, joy doesn't need to be like hilariously giggling, like head exploding, you're so happy. Joy can be just like a peace with yourself that you can really find in nature. But I think, sorry, to go back to your question, I'm veering off. How does vulnerability play into it? I do think it's everything. I don't think I think it's hard. I think it requires bravery. I think that, you do have to be a little bit fearless to kind of, unzip your heart and show it to others, whether it's at like a large scale in the way that I'm doing, or whether it's just with like the people in your, your immediate circle in life. But I do think that it's so much more rewarding when you live life that way. I mean, we have one life to live, right? And I think the last couple of years have only shown us how quickly it can be taken away. I also feel like now I'm even more addicted to vulnerability because I've realized, I do only have one life to live. I have kind of walked through the fire of a lot of stuff in the last couple of years. So what do I have to lose? Like, why would you not live life this way? Why would you not commit to living life in a vulnerable, authentic, fearless way? Because it's so much more rewarding.
And ladies and gentlemen, I mean, this is the Fearless Road with Maria Failla, Phaedra Shinaki, Michael Devous. The key takeaways, I just want to remind everybody out there, if you're on this journey and you're on your fearless road, you're not alone. We are all with you on this, and we are discovering that joy can be had, can be found, can be nurtured, can be practiced. And if you want to know a bit more about that journey with joy, pardon me, pick up this book, Growing Joy from Maria Failla. There it is.
Yay!
The Plant Lover's Guide to Cultivating Happiness and Plants. With this book, I'm telling you, there's so much in there that you're going to get from it. But if you put it into practice, if you really find ways to execute this one, you're going to find your voice. That's key. Find your voice. Maria knows about this. She knows exactly how to do this. Get in touch with her. Reach out to her. Oh, speaking of which, how can our guests get in touch with you?
Where do we find you?
Yeah, I was going to say, please get my book. It's my love letter to plants.
Behind the plant.
Yeah, exactly. There I am with my crazy plant people eyes. But, you're listening to this podcast. Add my podcast to your list of subscriptions, Growing Joy with Plants. Yep. On the podcast, I interview experts in horticulture on literally every type of plant you could ever want to grow. I probably have an episode on it. We have over 200 episodes all dedicated to houseplants, gardening, and wellness through the lens of nature. So we've got
such a great resource.
Yeah,
so amazing.
We've got episodes on
so good.
How to forest bathe, how to do all of these things. So come hang out with me in this kind of digital corner of the universe on the Growing Joy with Plants podcast. And then on socials, I'm Growing Joy with Maria, and my DMs are always open. And I'd love to see all the pictures of your plants.
Yes. Well, and you're Growing Joy with Maria. She has brought so much joy today to my show, to this show, to our listeners.
And to us.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Yes. Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Absolutely.
Of course. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, create balance in your life and create a mindful practice with a sustainable routine. You can do it. Find your joy with Maria. Find your fearlessness. with the Fearless Road podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today, Maria. You've been incredible. What a
Thanks for
joy.
having
What a
me.
lovely, lovely time. And
Thank you.
ladies and gentlemen, what do we say?
We say stay fearless.
Stay fearless. Bye.